As a responsible person with growing concerns for your privacy and personal liberty, you want to know where we're headed and what you can do about it. We ask the experts what you need to do to take prudent and responsible action to safeguard your family's wealth and well-being, and what basic first steps will help you to be aware and prepared. ReluctantPreppers.com.
Welcome back, Reluctant Preppers. We have a returning guest tonight. Mike Rivero, founder of WRH, or WhatReallyHappened.com, is here with us on Reluctant Preppers again to tell us what's going on behind the story that we'll get from the mainstream media. Mike, thanks for joining us again on Reluctant Preppers.
Thank you for having me again.
A little over a year ago, we had you on and talked about Obama's scorecard for preppers, and we examined area after area, both militarily, economically, politically, socially, etc., through the effects on freedom and livelihood of an Obama presidency, and even health and well-being. Now we're at the end of Obama's presidency, and we have President-elect Trump about to take the reins. We'd want to get one more chance for you to weigh in on the net effects to people who are liberty and freedom-minded, who want to protect their wealth and well-being. What is the legacy of the Obama presidency for ordinary people, and what can we have to look forward to and anticipate a Trump presidency will bring to our liberty and our life and well-being? So if you're game for that, could you plunge on in and give us your walkthrough of what the legacy is for ordinary people for our life, liberty, and wealth and well-being from an Obama presidency?
Well, the legacy is lingering on from Obama. As of today, there was a change in the rules regarding online surveillance, where a single warrant issued by a single judge now authorizes the FBI to hack into computers all across the country and around the world without the judge even knowing where it's going to happen. So it's basically a fishing license to go on out and violate people's privacy. Interestingly enough, the corporate media is already out there trying to spin that this is an artifact of the Trump era, even though obviously Donald Trump had nothing to do with these rules, and he is still not president and can't have an impact on any of these things. But as far as the Obama legacy, it's going to take a while to undo a lot of the damage that's been done. One of the areas I think we all need to be paying attention to is that Donald Trump is inheriting a very fragile and unstable economy. In a lot of ways, it's very much like President Herbert Hoover, who inherited a badly damaged, weak economy, which led to the Depression of the 1930s. And history sort of blames Herbert Hoover for the Depression of the 1930s, but Hoover didn't create the Depression. It was created for him by his predecessors, by Wall Street and the banks. And in evaluating what's going on with the economy, it's hard to see any real solutions available to Donald Trump to deal with this mess of out-of-control debt, out-of-control speculation. We do know that they're looking at overturning Dodd-Frank and trying to rein in the Wall Street banks from some of the out-of-control speculation. I have a family member who's actually involved in the government regulatory agencies, and they're already making preparations to go back to Glass-Steagall. With regard to banking, once Trump takes office, it's pretty much presumed that that's going to come back. And that would be a good thing to deal with the control of banks gambling with their customers' money. But there's a lot of other issues out there, and I don't envy Donald Trump the job. I think in the economic sense, our nation is at worse risk than when Obama took office, and how much and what Donald Trump can do about it is very much an unknown. So in terms of having your wealth under your own control, that still applies. Having physical silver, physical gold under your control. We're seeing this push all around the world, not just in the United States, to try and outlaw cash, to take away our freedom to have our own wealth in our own pockets to spend as we see fit. They've already started shutting down cash, withdrawing it from circulation in India. They almost locked up the economy there. We're starting to see other countries trying to push in that direction. And the goal is basically that you are not allowed to have your own wealth anymore. It'll be handled for you by a bank to make you dependent on the banks. to not only track all your financial transactions, but to allow them to be taxed and for the bank to charge fees, and most importantly, to make it impossible for anybody to go to a bank that's on the verge of collapse and say, I want my savings account back, because all they'll say is all we can do is move it to another bank. And there was a change in the law passed by Congress, I think 3 Novembers ago, where bank savings account customers are now redefined legally as unsecured investors in the bank, meaning savings account holders can lose their money when the bank gets into trouble. And that is alarming a lot of people. Plus, we have this growing trend of negative interest rates, which once they can get to a cashless society, they can make those negative interest rates as negative as they want, and there's not anything that anybody can do about it. So obviously having your wealth in silver and gold is a good idea, except that, and I did predict this was going to happen, the cashless society cannot work as long as there's any other means of wealth storage, wealth preservation. And we're already hearing rumblings from the government of India that they're going to ban private ownership of gold, just like Roosevelt did in this country back in 1933. And that's going to cause some serious ripples, because India is a major consumer of gold at the consumer level. Everybody's got bracelets and bangles. You walk through any marketplace, and there are stalls where all this gold jewelry is available to purchase. And if those are all shut down and the people of India ordered to turn their gold in, it's going to have repercussions for the international gold market. Basically, the global banking system has put itself into a real corner. Their only solution is to find some ways to take more money away from ordinary people and keep it for themselves. And how Trump is going to deal with this, I'm really not sure. Now, on the upside, it is very clear that Donald Trump meant what he said when he talked about pulling back from the war agenda, about going back to being friends with Russia, peace through commerce, about making friends with China. So the idea of possibly having to deal with a major war, potentially nuclear, that seems to be fading right now, and that's a good thing. And people may not have to be so worried about having a bomb shelter on their property as we did at the height of the Cold War back in the 1950s. So that's definitely one aspect. We are looking at Trump trying to bring the jobs back, which might improve our economy a little tiny bit. We know he wants to revive manufacturing, and that would be a good thing as well. Overall, I'm seeing the Trump presidency as definitely heading in the right direction, but of course he's facing a lot of institutional resistance from the current entrenched officials and agencies that like things just the way they are. So our work is not over with the inauguration of Donald Trump. In fact, it's just going to be beginning. But as far as what's really going to happen, time will solve that mystery. And looking at Donald Trump's appointments, and everybody's already doing Monday morning quarterback, oh, why did he do this? Why did he do that? There is a clear pattern in that Donald Trump is not picking his cabinet appointments in terms of ideologies. He's looking for competency, and he's picking up people who are very, very good at what they do. He's holding over one of the Obama federal prosecutors who was looking into the Clinton Foundation. So Trump may be intending to move forward with that investigation as well.
Now, you mentioned some of Trump's policies that people are trying to look forward to. There was an article that came out today talking about how the U.S. debt has passed $19.9 trillion and expected to pass $20 trillion in February and 20.15 by the end of next year. In your view, will a Trump presidency likely increase the rate of the growth of the U.S. debt, or do you think that will be offset by business developments and tax revenues that will forestall that?
In the long range, yes, because once you bring back the manufacturing, the agriculture, people will be able to afford to buy things, generate economic activity and tax revenues. It won't happen immediately. What will happen will be a repeat of what happened when Ronald Reagan was president and he signed this huge tax cut into law, and everybody was screaming, oh, the government will starve, the government will starve. But the economy took off because all of a sudden people had more money to work with, to invest with, to start businesses with, and the net result for tax revenues was an increase. But most politicians don't seem able to look at that. Their attitude is, we want our money now, and taxes are the easiest way to get it. And certainly we've been taxed to the edge of economic paralysis at this point. So I think what's going to happen is Trump is going to have to go back to Franklin Roosevelt. I think he is going to run up the debt in his first year considerably, but he's going to be putting that money into infrastructure development, reviving manufacturing. He's not going to be spending it on war, which like his predecessors have been doing. Trillion here, trillion there, and soon you're talking some real money. So nothing is going to happen overnight. There are going to be no miracles. Anybody who thinks that Donald Trump is going to get into the White House and magically change everything immediately all by himself, you're living in a dream world. We're all going to be working with him. We're going to have to stand shoulder to shoulder with Trump. We're going to have to start glaring through the windows of those offices of the senators and the representatives and remind them they're supposed to be working for us, not for Israel, not for Monsanto, not for Big Pharma, not for Wall Street, and send them a clear, unequivocal message that if they don't remember who they're really supposed to be taking care of, then we will do to them next election what we just did to Hillary this election. And that is now a credible threat, because Trump's election victory sent shockwaves through the establishment. They were absolutely convinced they had a lock on who was going to be the president and who was going to set policy, and they didn't need to worry about the future for themselves. Now, all of a sudden, they're realizing they're vulnerable. The corporate media is panicking. They're losing audience share to the independent media. And literally, they've gone on a war against the independent media. They're out there with this Joe McCarthy idea that everybody with an independent media website is a Russian stooge, and we're all working for Vladimir Putin. And some of these independent media organizations are getting ready to file a defamation lawsuit against the Washington Post and their source, a website called Prop or Not, that was set up last summer through a private registration company. So we don't actually know who created the website. And certainly they don't provide any evidence whatsoever that any of the people on their blacklist, which includes whatreallyhappened.com, have any connection with Russia at all. So it's a clear case of defamation. And if it goes class action, I'm definitely going to be joining in.
Now, you've led right into where I wanted to ask you about, because you have a curious distinction among all the guests that we've had on Reluctant Preppers, and we've had many, but due to new guidelines that policies that YouTube has been following, which they term in this innocuous term advertiser-friendly guidelines, your videos on our channel more than any others have had monetization withdrawn on them and said they're not advertiser friendly. This, as it's been discussed in the preparedness community, is a very heavy-handed censorship technique that's being used, and it also makes no sense rationally, because if you look at videos that criticize the banking industry or criticize government or talk about risks that are present in the system, there are plenty of advertisers who would be very happy to share their services or their products or whatever to people who are interested about reducing risk and about taking prudent action to help make sure they take care of business for their family. So it's not that it's not advertiser friendly. There's plenty of advertisers, so there's something else going on. Can you help us unravel what is it about the way that you reveal what really happened that's trying to be censored here, and why have we've even had to make it so we have to sanitize the descriptions on some of those videos and take out all the interesting words, because otherwise it'll be taken down as not advertiser friendly. So we've even had to launch our own now independent newsletter. If people go to reluctantpreppers.com, they can sign up for free for our new newsletter, so we can put the unabridged and unedited versions of the notes that we used to be able to publish under your interviews and those of others. But you hold that distinction, Mike. So what is it that makes you such a hot topic that YouTube's concerned about? The things
it's not just me. It's all the independent media, and part of it, of course, is again trying to maintain corporate media monopoly over what people are seeing, reading, hearing, talking about. The other aspect of it is the corporate media, especially after this election. The corporate media has finally woken up to the fact They no longer have a monopoly on information flow through our society. And so their strategy is to try and find ways to drive us out of business, to bankrupt us. By sabotaging our advertising, calling our advertisers, and trying to scare them off of us. Again, these are tactics that betray a tremendous fear on their part. Now, the corporate media is already losing money hand over fist. And many of these social media platforms like Facebook have been caught literally committing fraud to defraud their advertisers. By artificially inflating their viewership numbers. But these corporate media outlets are underwritten by very wealthy institutions and individuals who are willing to sign those checks as long as the corporate media is able to prove that they're in control of the minds of America. And the reality is that the corporate media is not paid all that money to report the news or to tell you the truth. You can get that very inexpensively anywhere you want to go. The corporate media's business model is they are paid millions of dollars to be very convincing liars. And this election and the decline in the corporate media's audience and the increase in the independent media's audience is showing we're at a watershed moment where the traditional corporate TV, radio, news media is rapidly becoming irrelevant. And they're very much concerned. They don't want to give up those $1 million paychecks. And they know they can't go back to telling the truth because that's not what they're being paid to do. So they're literally trying to find any way they can shut down their competition. We know that had Hillary won the election, she already had a plan to basically shut independent media down, one that Obama was already talking about with his curating function. To basically say nobody is allowed to post any kind of news or opinion on the internet without a government license the way the corporate media operates. Donald Trump, of course, understands the corporate media was his enemy during this campaign, and he's going to be very supportive of a free and independent media on the internet. As a matter of fact, there's an interesting story that shortly after winning the election, Donald Trump had a meeting with the heads of the major media corporations, and they all walked in there to Trump Tower expecting that they were going to get the rules for how they were going to get access to the White House. And instead, Trump did an apprentice-style dressing down of them and said, you're all a bunch of liars. You need to be ashamed, and basically threw them on out. And the media has reacted by going on the attack even more. The New York Times got caught in a huge whopper. They ran this headline, Donald Trump will not criminally investigate Hillary Clinton, knowing it was going to destroy a lot of Trump's support. And it turned out the New York Times reporters just made this up. The actual interview of the transcript, they're asking him, are you going to take the investigations off the table? Trump says no. And they took another quote about it's not a priority and I'm not out for revenge. And they basically used that to justify this claim that Trump was not going to criminally investigate Hillary Clinton. Completely bogus. The mainstream media ran with it. They're running all these articles about how we're all the fake news and they're the true news, which is kind of a hard sell when people start looking back at how the corporate media was there telling us Saddam had weapons of mass destruction and Assad was using gas on his own people and the Lusitania wasn't carrying weapons, and on and on and on. And, you know, just how the BBC reported on the collapse of Building 7 22 minutes before it actually happened on 9/11. So it's a tough sell, and they're resorting to these Red Scare tactics and McCarthy tactics to try and demonize us, and they're not getting any traction with it at all. Donald Trump has already signaled that the traditional corporate media does not have the inside track to the White House press room. Trump is using Twitter to directly communicate to the American people, to bypass the corporate media. And Twitter has responded by threatening to cancel all of Donald Trump's channels because he's putting out hate speech. And so it's all about the corporate media wanting to maintain its monopoly control over information flow in this country. And they've already lost it. And if you go back and study the history of when Gutenberg rediscovered movable type printing, you'll see that the power structure of his day reacted in much the same fashion, trying to shut it all down, this idea of middle class being able to afford books and literacy exploding. It's a threat to our system. It's a threat to our society. They're not going to believe what the rulers and the clergy tell them. And we're seeing exactly the same thing again today. In fact, Obama came out with a comment just a few days ago that he thinks Americans have access to way too much information, that it would really be much better if they were just dumb and believed what the TV told them. So we're on the threshold of a major sociological revolution and a re-democratization of our society, all brought about by the internet, the independent media, peer-to-peer communications.
Well, Mike, those were the main points we wanted to really hit tonight. Any further aspects of the Obama legacy or what we can look forward to in the Trump presidency that you think you'd like to weigh in on before we wrap?
Well, again, with Donald Trump, it's really premature to be analyzing and judging until he's actually got the job. And we need to be very, very careful because Hillary's people have not given up hope that they can find some way to the White House. They were trying to do all these recounts in 3 states, not because they thought the recounts were going to change the results, but to try and keep these 3 states from participating in the Electoral College on December 19th, which would have allowed a mere handful of faithless, defecting electors to steal the White House for Hillary Clinton. Fortunately, that plan has fallen apart. Judges in 2 of the states have already rejected the petitions for hand recounts. And what we have to be concerned about now, of course, is something unfortunate happening to Donald Trump between now and December 19th. Because if something were to happen, if he were to be shot, if his plane were to crash, if he were to be struck by a bolt of lightning, then the Electoral College would be perfectly within their rights to hand the White House to Hillary Clinton. I really think this thank you tour that he is doing right now was a very reckless and dangerous idea. And I like Donald Trump because he's an outsider and not a career politician. I don't agree with everything he says. One of my biggest concerns is that, like Jimmy Carter, being an outsider, being a reactionary president, he is in many ways as dangerously naive about just how dirty Washington, D.C. politics can get. And I'm very, very concerned that there will be an attempt on his life before December 19th. After that, if something happens to Trump, then Mike Pence becomes the president and Hillary gets to go into retirement. So we need to be certainly vigilant about that. I will be very happy once Donald Trump takes the oath of office. But even then, Trump is going into the White House with as many different institutions and entities opposed to him, as was the case with John F. Kennedy, and we all know what happened with him.
Well, Mike Rivero, you are a fountain of unconventional and non-mainstream sources of information and perspectives on things. If people want to find out more of your work, please direct them to how they can get plugged in.
Well, the website is called whatreallyhappened.com, past tense. There are now a lot of lookalike sites, so you have to be very, very careful that you're getting the real whatreallyhappened.com. And, of course, I do my own talk radio show every Monday through Friday from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. on the Republic Broadcasting Network.
Mike Rivero, founder of whatreallyhappened.com, thank you very much again for joining us here on Reluctant Preppers.
Thank you for having me.